night, good evening. I hope everyone has had a good day. I hope no one has fallen down recently. It is unpleasant. I don't advise doing that. Do something else instead. Get new feet. Uh, um, so today is going to be a really fun one for me. I hope you'll enjoy this one. You've made it halfway through the week. Congratulations. This should be a really fun conversation for me. The trick here is not going to be giving it all away, but we'll see how I do. So hopefully everyone is doing okay. Oh gosh. I only have water tonight, not coffee or tea, but that's okay. I've had a lot of coffee and tea today. So, in the interest of me being super excited, let's get started with this. Yeah, let's just get this started. As per usual, this is meant to entertain and inform, and I don't hold any of the rights to the works described. I hope you enjoy. There will be an interesting caveat when we get to the book covers, because I'll tell you when we get there. It's a little unusual, even for... Oh, come on. There we go. We are talking about the Masterharper of Pern by Anne McCaffrey. It is my second favorite book in Pern. My first favorite outside of the Harpercraft Hall trilogy, and it's about either my second or third favorite person. I'm not entirely sure which. It depends on the day, but I adore the main character of this book, so... Publishing details. It was originally published in 1998 by Del Rey. It is book... I couldn't tell if it's book 13 or 14 in the Dragon Riders of Pern. It's one of those. It is a high number in the Dragon Riders of Pern. That being said, I'm going to say this here and now. The Dragon Riders of Pern novels are not exactly like Discworld in that you can technically read any of them by themselves, but this is one of the books that you can. The very first book, Dragonflight, you can read by itself. You can read the Masterharper of Pern by itself. You can read all of the Harpercraft Hall trilogy as a unit by itself without reading any of the other Pern books, but I wouldn't suggest picking up Dragon Drums because you'll be very confused because it implies that you already know the characters. There are books within Pern that you need to have read the other Pern books to understand. This isn't one of them. If you've never read a Pern book before, you can pick this one up and have a good time. So this is the original cover of the Masterharper of Pern. Importantly, this is also the American cover of the Masterharper of Pern. The illustrator is Brom. I know that because that's what the book says. I attempted to look up the illustrator Brom, and I found one, and that is where the information here is from. However, I couldn't find anywhere on his site that he was the illustrator for the Masterharper of Pern. So, the information I found is about an illustrator who goes by Brom. I believe it is this one, but he mostly does horror and creepy things now. Like, really well done, but also not dragons, so it's really hard to look at it and be like, oh yes, this is the same style of dragons. I can't tell. But illustrated a lot of TTRPGs. He did concept art for video games, including things like Diablo. He did Magic the Gathering cards, and illustrates his own horror novels that he writes. Um, I will say, if he did this cover, then he probably did a lot of the US covers because many of them are in this style until you start hitting like the really new stuff, and then it's clearly a different vibe altogether. The alternate cover, this is by Corgi. This is the 1999 Corgi cover by Steve Weston. From what I can tell, Steve Weston did the UK covers. Full stop. He is a British illustrator who did 15 covers for the UK volumes of McCaffrey's work. This is not just the Pern covers. This is also things like The Crystal Singer and Pegasus? Paladin? I think it's Pegasus. He also did video game box art. I will admit, I looked through all of the games that he did box art for. I do not recognize them. That's okay. He was in that space and era. Also, most of the Pern novels I could find, he was listed as the cover illustrator for up to a certain point, and then the style changed and it was really obvious. So, Anne McCaffrey, born in 1926 and passed away in 2011. She's an American author who wrote both sci-fi and fantasy, and some that were both. There is going to be a caveat to that in just a minute. She is the first woman to win a Hugo Award and a Nebula Award, and I don't mean she's the first to win both. She's the first to win either. She did win both. First to win either. She considered all of her work sci-fi. So she's a prolific writer. She writes a ton of things. I know her best for Pern, but I have been a dragon-obsessed person since childhood. And yes, if you get deep enough into Pern, it is sci-fi. In a fantasy dress. However, my favorite parts of Pern are the fantasy elements, not the sci-fi elements. For example, let me just, one of the arguments that McCaffrey herself made about her dragons being sci-fi and not fantasy is that they were genetically engineered. Kind of like how humans and sheep, we bred sheep to have more wool. That kind of thing. Same thing with dragons. They were not the dragons that are in the books originally, and they were also they have to eat a certain rock to breathe fire. We're not going to get into that, just accept that. That is how dragons breathing fire works. Not all of them do it for other reasons. But she's used that to be like, oh, they're all science fiction. I'm not a fantasy author. She can say that. However, the science isn't critical in a lot of her books, which it's kind of like, for me, Star Wars is a space fantasy. It is science fantasy, not science fiction, because the science isn't actually important in Star Wars. And it's kind of like that in this book. In this particular Pern book and the other earlier Pern books, the science isn't as important. I mean, I guess technically the White Dragon is an early Pern book, but yeah. It's hard to explain. I really like the books. I would like to preemptively say, don't think I don't enjoy Pern. I will say I don't enjoy all of Anne McCaffrey's writing. I don't enjoy the Crystal Singer trilogy, Kilishandra, the Crystal Singer, and the Crystal Line, I think. Mostly because I read all of the first one and went, absolutely not, I can't stand the main character. Kind of like when I tried to watch Korra. Absolutely not, I can't stand the main character. So this book is kind of the antithesis of that for me because this is Robinton. What do you need to know? This is a book about music. The Harpers are the historians and musicians of the world. They are the basic teachers of the world. They teach everybody reading, writing, and the things they should know about history. And also, there are songs known as the duty songs and the teaching songs. So, the teaching songs can be things like, oh, here's the geography, and here's where the holds are, and here's where the weirs are. And then the duty songs are more like, this is your duty as a holder to the weir. For the most part, that's how the duty songs go. But it's also, here are your duties as a small holder to a lord holder, and stuff like that. And also, like, here's your duty to the planet. To a lesser extent. It's about dragons. Pern has dragons. Look, this is the least dragony of the dragon books. Mostly because you're not directly following a dragon rider. That being said, dragons are important in all of Robinton's life and also just in Pern in general. So all Pern books, to an extent, are about dragons. Not completely. Like, there are some that are less about dragons, but all Pern books, vaguely about dragons. This is a book about family. We'll get into that one a little later. That's a little sticky in this book. And then it's a slow read. Even for someone who adores the characters, this is a slow read. So your main character is Robinton. He is the musical genius son of master singer Marlon and master composer Petaron, born into the Harpercraft Hall. He was born to the best singer and composer in 200 years, born literally inside of the building, surrounded by music. It's a big deal. He is more musically gifted than his father, who expects perfection of everyone. This is a point of contention. This is a driving thread through the book. It is one of the points that's a little weird if you've read the Harpercraft Hall trilogy first, but it is a fact in this book, and trying to limit this to specifically this book, his father is a point of contention. He is a bit of a Mary Sue. I will admit that. He is absolutely the golden child of Pern, and the whole world loves him, even the ones who don't love him. His flaws are not really portrayed as flaws 90% of the time. That being said, I adore him. He is confident without being arrogant, and it is wonderful to see a competent character sometimes, even if they are competent because they're Mary Sue. I love him in this book. I love him when he's a kid. I love him when he's a journeyman. And that only compounds the fact that I love him in the other books. So this was not the first Pern book I read. I started with the Harpercraft Hall trilogy, and then I read Dragonflight and... Is it Dragonflight and the Dragon Riders of Pern? That's not right. It's... What's the second book in that series? Where is my mouse? There it is. Hang on. What is, Dragon Riders of Pern. It's book 2, honey. Book 2 is Dragon Quest. Okay. So, there we go. So, yes, having read the Harpercraft Hall trilogy, and then I read Dragonflight and Dragon Quest and The White Dragon, which is the original trilogy. I adored Robinson in those. I wanted more Robinson, and then I read the Masterharper of Pern. You'll notice that is only 6 books, and this is book either 13 or 14. Yeah, that doesn't matter. I adore this book because it's about a character I like. It's sort of third person omniscient in that you're not completely in anybody's head, and sometimes you'll just get dips into whoever's head you're following. It is a book where it circles around Robinson, but it's not. You witness conversations outside of his hearing and knowledge, and you get like minor thought patterns of other people. So like his mother, his father, one of the nurses. So it's very much the omniscient point of view, but it's not always completely focused on Robinson, but it is, everything that is shown is a facet of what affects his life. It's part of why he's a Mary Sue. This book is absolutely very much warps the world around him. I love him anyway. Leave him alone. He is one of my favorites. This is a book about music. While the reader does not need any explicit knowledge of music, everything you need to understand for the plot is explained. It explains what teaching songs are. It explains why harpers are important. It explains what journeymen are. It explains what stamp marks are. There are little nuances that it doesn't explain. Things like Merlin being a coloratura soprano, and there's 2 other characters that are contraltos, and they don't actually define what that is. But they're like, oh, they sound really good in a duet because you have the very high and the lower, and it's like, oh, that sounds so good. Fantastic. If you can understand that these women sing at different pitches, that's all you really need to know. Are there fine details? Yes. There are things like, oh, they talk about variations, and they talk about octave jumps, and they talk about breaking your voice, and they talk about, yes, they go into more in-depth music verbiage. You don't need to understand what all of it means. If it is important to the plot, they will explain it. If it is not critical to the plot, they won't. It's kind of like flavor text. I hate to say that about a book I love, but it really is. A lot of the music information is flavor text because they're trying to get the reader to understand this is a man who is born surrounded by music, grows up surrounded by music. Music is the life and breath of his whole world. It's what surrounds his parents, it's what surrounds him. It's everything, basically. It also comes in because he is a genius. Also, Mary Sue. If I needed to defend his Mary Sue-ness for whatever reason, he's a musical genius who at 3 can play a pipe, which is the way it's described is basically a recorder, and at 5 is writing his own variations to songs. So yeah, musical genius, very much Mary Sue. I love him, but very much Mary Sue. It's kind of like my relationship with Drizzt. I love him, very much Mary Sue. A Dragons! The Masterharper of Pern takes place before the original trilogy, So 5 of the 6 weirs are empty. Let me explain that in very basic terms, because there's some things you need to know about Pern. They do explain it in the book, but also just if you would like to go in not completely blind and confused about how dragons work in Pern, here is your how dragons work in Pern. There are 6 weirs. They align with the 6 Lord Holdings. At the time of this book, the original trilogy, and the other books that take place before the original trilogy, which is some of them. 5 of those 6 weirs are empty. One of them, Bindon, is not. And no one knows why. No one knows why Bindon is the only weir that still has A, people, and B, dragons. But they do. The other thing you need to know is that dragons on Pern come in 5 colors: gold, bronze, blue, green, and brown. They have a telepathic link to their riders specifically, though they can't understand each other, and there are a few humans that can speak to all dragons. Typically, those are queen riders. Queens are the golds. As such name implies, gold dragons are female. So are greens, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. And then bronze, blue, and brown are all boys. Yeah, I think that's how it... Oh my gosh, she literally broke it down by initial. I don't think I've ever looked at it all written out like that before. Yeah, the 2 G's are girls, the 3 B's are boys. I have suddenly discovered this is very easy. So those are the main things you need to understand about dragons. No, I think everything else is explained actually in the books. In the Masterharper of Pern. You don't need me to explain that to you. But that is a thing that's kind of glossed over. Like, they do talk about, it has been a long time. Oh, do I need to explain thread? Do you want me to explain thread? I can. Briefly. It is about the dragons, but it's not about the dragons. Okay. Alright, so... the dragons were genetically engineered to fight Thread. Thread falls from the red star. Stick with me, guys. Please stick with me. Thread is a parasite from space that at certain points in time, when the red star is close enough to the planet, it falls from the red star. And then when it drifts too far away, there are long periods where Thread hasn't fallen. This book starts in one of those long periods with no Thread. Dragons were engineered to fight Thread. So they chew this rock, they breathe fire, the fire burns up the Thread before it hits the ground because it eats through anything organic. Thread is awful. It falls out of the sky, it burrows into the ground, it eats through anything organic, you kill it with fire. That is how Thread do. It'll eat through plants, it'll eat through people, it'll eat through dragons. So, burn it out of the sky before it can land. There's also something called ground crews. When they're in a pass, which is when the star is close enough to drop Thread. When they're in a pass, I think it's called a pass. I think it is. Then there are ground crews that go out after the dragons have done their thing. When the thread stops actively falling, and their job is to basically burn anything that looks like thread on the ground, because they don't want it to burrow and multiply and be bad. Speaking of things like a pass and thread being called thread, there are a couple of things in this book that have weird names. Mostly because it's like this is a different world, they would define things differently. Half a wing of dragons is 6 dragons. A full wing is 12. So they will define it. Typically in a way like that of, oh, there's a half wing of dragons, 4 landed in the courtyard, 2 landed outside. Half a wing of dragons is 6 dragons. Stuff like that. So they do explain their verbiage for the most part. Some of it is context clues, but 90% of it is explained. This is a story about family. While the story circles around Robinton's and his deeds that lead to him being the Masterharper, this is, by the way, like, on the one hand, yeah, it's a spoiler. On the other hand, it's literally the title of the book. If you didn't know, surprise, Robinton eventually becomes the Masterharper of Pern, as per the title, and the picture on the cover of the book. Most of his life is defined by his family, both his blood family and his family of choice. His family of choice being twofold, both in the romantic sense and in the sense of the Harpercraft Hall is considered family. So where this gets weird and sticky is a lot of who Robinton is defined in the first half of the book by his relationship specifically to his parents, and how his relationship with his mother differs from his relationship with his father, and how he kind of starts out always trying to impress his father and kind of realizes he can't. And then he holds that fact pretty close for a lot of the book. It is not a nice thing. It is one of those things of, this is how the world is, and it kind of is awful. The other thing is that you see a lot of families in this book beyond just Robinton's. You see the families of other people at the Harpercraft Hall. You see the family of Lord Holders. You see the families at the Weir. You see a lot of things like that. But as much as Robinton's life is shaped by music, a lot of his actions are defined by his family. It's a slow read. This is a book that stands alone in an established world. It is dense on the world building, even for those who know the world. So I came into this being very familiar with Pern, being very familiar with how the world works, knowing where in the timeline this is, having read this book, specifically this book before, and loving the character and knowing the end game and knowing other things that will happen beyond this book and how the setup works. It's still a slow read. It is still dense. The first half of this book covers a lot of understanding how the world works and how the world is changing, while also focusing on child Robinton and his understanding. And there's a lot of information that is very childish from his perspective, but also there's a lot of information that is like on a much higher level from his mother's perspective, and to a lesser extent from his father's. I will say, for it being very dense, very dense, it never feels like the story stalls. You've got plenty of time skips in this. Like, they talk about, oh, he's a 3-year-old, and then the next thing you know, he's 5. Or it's like, oh, he was a 5-year-old, like, 3 pages ago. He's 9 now. Like, there is no, nothing feels like it's being lingered on too long. You're kind of hitting the high points of, hey, something important happened this year. Here's how old Robinson was. Here's what he was up to. So whether that is being able to play a recorder in tune, or, seeing dragons in person for the first time up close, stuff like that. But it is a slow read. There are lulls where they aren't, like, action heavy, but it never feels like it just stalls out. Excuse me. So my recommendations for dragon books. These should not be shocking. I've recommended all of these before at least once. Jeremy Thatcher Dragon Hatcher by Bruce Colville. It is a children's book about an artist. We're going to leave it there. His name is Jeremy Thatcher. 3 guesses what he does. The Lost Years of Merlin series, specifically, I think The Fires of Merlin is the one specifically about a dragon, but start at the beginning with that one. That one is rough if you try to read it out of order, by T.A. Barron. If you like The Lost Years, there's the sequel series. The Enchanted Forest Chronicles, which I don't actually know the individual books' names because I own them as an omnibus. Just find an omnibus? No. Look up Patricia C. Reed's Enchanted Forest Chronicles. I want to say Dealing with Dragons is the first one. Now that I've said this, I think this is the one that's Dealing with Dragons. It's super good. It is a different take on dragons. You've got dragons that have different kinds of hordes. You have dragons with princesses, and the most interesting thing for me when I read it as a kid was that the things like, oh, the Dragon King or the Dragon Queen, those were titles, not gendered roles, as is brought up in the very first book when one of the main dragons wants to become the Dragon King, and one of the princesses is like, oh, but you're a girl, wouldn't you be the queen? And she's like, no, it's a very different job. I don't want that job. And then the 2 princesses of Bamar also has a dragon. A different dragon than the others. I will say, if I am remembering correctly, I need to reread Jeremy Thatcher. It is a short read. I think that's the one where he names her Tiamat. So that's always fun. And then books about family. Unsurprisingly, I think I've recommended 3 to 4 of these before, and I've talked about 2 of them on this channel. So Ballad and Dagger by Daniel Jose Oldar. Highly recommend it. It's another music-heavy one, and it deals with the family in diaspora, and also feeling like an outsider within your family and community. Kith and Kin by Marique Nijkamp is the Critical Role book about the twins, Vax'ildan and Vex'ahlia. It is all about family, specifically about theirs. Correction, specifically about theirs as in each other, not theirs as in the rest of their family. The good and the bad and the ugly of that. So You Want to Be a Wizard by Diane Duane is the first book in the Young Wizard series. This one is not the most family focused, but this is another series where you really need to start at the beginning to get some kind of understanding and groundwork for the magic in this world, because it gets really wild in about 3 novels. But family is always a point. Both Kit's family and Nita's family are very important and stay important to different extents throughout the whole book. I will say one thing I really like about the Young Wizards books is just how supportive those families are. It is not a matter of, oh, my family is terrible and I want to run away, and one of those kind of books, which feels so common and easy for children's books. This is very much a series where the parents are like, I don't understand what you're doing, but also please tell me you're being safe, and then let's talk about this. And then last and most odd man out on this list is Homeland by R.A. Salvatore. So the other three all have good family members, good relations, as a whole family good. Homeland family is not good. If you would like to read about a Mary Sue with an evil family, Homeland is your jam. It is the first book of the prequel trilogy about Drizzt Do'Urden. Normally I'd say read the Icewind Dale trilogy first. It's less about family. This one is explicitly about Drizzt's actual biological family and the civilization, I guess, that he was brought up in. Spoiler alert, it's awful. But it is very much a book about family. So, yeah, that is that. I will say, why? Hang on. All my things are being dumped. There we go. I will say that my adoration of Pern in specific and dragons in general is a large part of why I like this book. If you're wondering, my favorite book from Pern is Dragon Singer, which is the second book in the Harpercraft Hall trilogy. I can't really explain it without spoiling that book entirely, but I adore the main character, I adore the general premise of that whole book, and Robinton is in that book, and I adore Robinton. I really do. If I can't tell you who the options are for my favorite characters in Pern other than Robinton, because they're spoilery not only for this book, but also for the Harpercraft Hall trilogy. The Harpercraft Hall trilogy also is aimed at a younger audience than most of the Pern books. So if you're like, hey, I want to start Pern and I want to start with something fun, fast, and easy that I don't need to like sit there and chew on to understand the world, the Harpercraft Hall trilogy is your jam. I'm not gonna. So here's a fun fact. Prior to reading The Crystal Singer, I would have said Anne McCaffrey is great at writing female characters, whether they are good characters or bad characters. And then I read The Crystal Singer, and now I'm like, look, some of Anne McCaffrey's female characters are fantastic, whether they are good, bad, and different, some combination. And some of her female characters are just annoying, and not I don't like Kilishandra. I don't like her at all. I think she has no character arc, and honestly, I think The Crystal Singer is an exercise in frustration to read simply because there's no character arc. And I know that is probably harsh, but Kilishandra is such a Mary Sue and doesn't have any kind of character arc and is the exact same character at the end that she was at the beginning. She's brash and arrogant, and just because she's competent doesn't mean she's enjoyable to be around. Like, Robinton is extremely competent, but at no point does he annoy me with that competence. Like, yes, are there parts of him that I'm like, yeah, that's clearly a Mary Sue thing? Yeah, absolutely. But also he grows. both literally from a child into an adult, and also just as a character, he makes mistakes, and learns, and like things happen that change who he is as a person. Killchandra doesn't get that, so it's hard for me to recommend the Crystal Singer series to anybody. I do find it really funny. So Anne McCaffrey considers all of her works as science fiction. She also wrote with Elizabeth Moon, who wrote the Deed of Paxenarian books. Elizabeth Moon is known for her science fiction. I haven't read any of Elizabeth Moon's science fiction because I prefer fantasy. I looked into the fact that she also writes fantasy. So it's really funny for me that it's like, oh, Anne McCaffrey wrote science fiction with Elizabeth Moon. It's like, oh, that's really cool. Yeah, I'm not reading that. I don't like sci-fi. So yeah, that is the Masterharper of Pern. I highly recommend it. If you don't like Robinton, please don't tell me you don't like Robinton. Just let me live in my happy little world where I adore Robinton. Also, fair warning, Robinton has the easiest name in the whole book. Everybody else has a complicated name, either due to spelling or due to just, how do you pronounce that? Once you get into the Dragon Riders, they all have an apostrophe somewhere in their name. Oh, wait. Okay, yeah. So good luck. Yeah. So I think if I have done my math right, let me double check and pull up. Oh, please don't freak out on me. Image. This. Oh my gosh, why is everything blurry? Okay, so next time should be April 2nd. Okay. So I'm probably going to do another YA novel, another blind read for next time. But I may have something extra planned, so keep an eye out for that. I will be doing another blind read, so not like this one where I've read it before and love it and adore the characters and just needed extra time to read it because A, migraine, and B, it's a dense book. Like, it's only like 400 and something pages. Like, it's not the longest. Yeah, it's 450. Oh my gosh, it has a glossary in the back. Use that to your advantage. Yeah, it has a glossary of who's who, and it's like name, dragon, color, their ID, and their location. That is fantastic. But yeah, so next time will be a blind read, and keep an eye out for something special. I'll see you on the 2nd.